is in the studio. You will be giving a lecture tomorrow at the Museum of the Rockies, presented by Museum of the Rockies and the Extreme History Project. The program is entitled, If You Had to Send a Message 12,500 Years into the Future, What Would It Be? Let me ask you that question. If you could send a message 12,500 years into the future, what would it be?
Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine. Make sure you floss. Well, first, that's a great question. It's not really my question, and let me just give you a background on where I got that title from. When the geneticist from Denmark came over to Montana, he wanted to meet some American Indians, and so I took him around to some reservations, 4 different reservations here in Montana, and we went to Crow Agency, where I'm from, and we visited with my uncle, and the geneticist told my uncle the story about the Anzac boy. And my uncle was very interested in all of it. One of the most fascinating things was that the geneticist told my uncle there was an elkhorn antler in that burial. That elkhorn antler, we measured it to be at least 300 to 500 years older than the boy. And so that family, ostensibly had held that in their hands really for many, many, many generations before this boy died, and they buried it with him. And my uncle was just, I think he was captivated by that, and so we had this interesting conversation with him, and we got back in the road and we headed back because we had a lot of ground to cover, and so the next morning my uncle sent me like a series of text messages. He said, "These are things I woke up thinking," and one of them was, "Do you have anything, Shane, do you have anything 250 years old? I don't." And he's a collector of old stuff. He's got a whole old garage shed full of old things, and nothing in there is 250 years old. And so that idea of something so old that people could hang on to it for so long and then give it away, he just was captivated by that, compelled by it. And then the other question was, he asked me, if you had to send a message 12,500 years into the future, what would it be? And what would you send with the messenger? All of us would love as if he was our own. And I think a lot of us feel that way about this little boy. He was only like a year and a half when he died. And, so many of us feel like, we have a responsibility to him in some way. He's kind of our child in some way. And it's hard not to feel that way when you look at, the love and care that was put into his burial. And so finding that, that the boy and all that stuff with the red ochre and all those things on there, the message is very, very clear. This was a message that was sent 12,500 years ago by people who didn't speak our language, who we've never seen. We probably could, it would be difficult to be further away from a group of people, yet somehow their message was so clear to every single human being who is able to really grasp what they see there. The message was, we love this child, that's unmistakably clear, and that we're willing to give, our full last devotion to this baby, which is all these 125 tools, which is basically a tool for every 3rd day of the year. This wasn't, they could have stopped at 50, right? They could have stopped at 80. No, they had to put the whole thing, and then they had to put the elkhorn in. These priceless tools that had, grandfathers and grandmothers had held in their hands, that they would put in there. That's the message. And, archaeologists, I think, have been looking at that message but have been unable to find the language to really articulate it. And so that's kind of, I feel like, where we come in as Native people and as, social anthropologists. And so my uncle's question, was one of those things that I think people should ask themselves. And, at this point, all of us should really have a larger question on our mind, which is, at the rate we're going, do you really think that there's going to be people on this planet 12,500 years from now? And will they be enjoying fresh air and clean water? If that's what we hope, and those are our dreams and visions, then we need to, act that way, and these people acted that way. You know, it wasn't good enough for them just to put this boy in the ground. They pulled their last full measure of devotion, and I think we could learn a lot from that culture. You know, we need to give more to our children in our own culture, and you know, make them the priority.
You've sort of hinted at what I'm expecting to be the answer, because the second half of the title of your presentation tomorrow at the Museum of the Rockies is considering the Anzac Boy from a 21st century tribal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the reaction so far from the people that you've talked to? Is it an interesting footnote of history, or is there some a serious tribal significance?
Well, there hasn't been really a serious tribal significance that I've really felt from tribal people. But I believe that it's going to take time for that to happen. And, you know, it's not something that just happens overnight. You know, wrapping your head around what this means and who this boy was. You know, in Indian country, we're very close to our relatives. And so the idea that this boy was 12,500 years old, you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to imagine how closely related we could be to this guy. And, you know, our tribal affiliation, you know, we know he wasn't our tribe, probably, with some other person. So I think it's going to take some time in our communities before we're able to, you know, really get the full meaning of this.
Dr. Shane Doyle in the studio with myself. 1450 KMMS, 1340 KPRK, 827. The other side of 60 seconds, we'll be wrapping things up with Dr. Shane Doyle.
Control.